Britain teeters on the brink as national debt hurtles towards £3 trillion. As public spending pressures mount, Labour's Rachel Reeves faces an uphill battle to slash borrowing and maintain market confidence. Cast your mind back a few months, it was then that the United Kingdom's national debt surpassed a once unthinkable milestone, breaching 100% of national income. A generation earlier, such a prospect would have been deemed nigh on inconceivable. Yet by 2024, this alarming threshold had become so commonplace amongst mature, advanced economies that it barely warranted a raised eyebrow from economic commentators or the general public. Within the hallowed halls of Her Majesty's Treasury, a palpable sense of despair has taken hold. Civil servants and ministers alike are at their wits' end, metaphorically tearing their hair out in frustration. The cause of their distress? Yet another of those dreaded external shocks that seem to buffet the global economy with alarming regularity has come crashing onto British shores. To their absolute horror, government ministers find themselves bereft of fiscal buffers necessary to cushion the blow of this latest economic tempest. The cupboard, as they say, is bare. But the situation is about to deteriorate even further. In a nightmarish turn of events, international investors have abruptly lost faith in the United Kingdom's ability to service its mountainous debts. A so-called buyer's strike has taken hold in the UK gilts market, the trading arena for government bonds. This sudden crisis of confidence threatens to upend decades of relative stability in British government financing. As panic sets in, the pound sterling enters freefall, plummeting against major global currencies. Simultaneously, interest rates rocket skywards, further exacerbating the government's borrowing costs and severely undermining its ability to tap bond markets for much needed funds. Faced with this fiscal calamity, desperate times call for desperate measures. In a move that would have been unthinkable just a few years prior, the independence of the Bank of England, a cornerstone of UK economic policy since 1997, is summarily suspended. Central bank officials received direct instructions to fire up the printing presses, creating money out of thin air to meet the government's burgeoning spending needs. The consequences are swift and severe. Inflation, which had been relatively contained for years, suddenly takes off like a rocket. The value of the pound, already under immense pressure, falls further still. Britain finds itself caught in a vicious downward spiral, descending rapidly into economic, social and political chaos. It's crucial to note that this harrowing scenario remains, for now, a description of a possible future. There's no certainty that events will unfold precisely in this manner. However, the trajectory is clear, and the potential for such a fiscal crisis looms larger for each passing day. Indeed, if decisive action isn't taken to alter course, our imagined financial meltdown may materialise even sooner than the near future. For those willing to look closely, there are already subtle indications of strain within the gilts market. Yields on government bonds are arguably higher than one might expect. Given the anticipated trajectory of the Bank of England's official policy rate, more worryingly, credit risk, the possibility that the UK might default on its debt obligations, is beginning to creep into investors' calculations. One of the most vexing aspects of this looming crisis is the uncertainty surrounding the point of no return. At what level of indebtedness do the markets finally lose patience? The fact that public debt has already risen to such dizzying heights without triggering a catastrophic loss of confidence has bred a dangerous complacency among policymakers. Michael Saunders, a respected voice in British economic circles who formerly served on the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee and now advises Oxford Economics, offers a sobering perspective. He argues that no responsible government would willingly test the markets to determine where the breaking point lies. The potential consequences, he warns, are simply too dire to contemplate. To fully appreciate the gravity of the situation, it's worth reflecting on British economic history. The last time the UK faced an outright buyer strike in debt markets was nearly 6 decades ago. In 1976, that crisis forced James Callaghan's Labour government to suffer the humiliation of seeking a bailout from the International Monetary Fund. While the circumstances and structure of debt markets have evolved significantly since then, it's worth noting that the national debt in 1976 stood at less than half of its current level relative to national income. This sobering comparison underscores a crucial point. A catastrophic loss of market confidence can strike with frightening suddenness, often when least expected. The recent market turmoil triggered by Liz Truss's ill-fated mini-budget serves as a stark reminder of this reality. As Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, puts the finishing touches on her inaugural budget speech, scheduled for later this month, it is this overarching threat that must inform every decision she makes. The spectre of debt crisis looms large, casting a long shadow over her policy choices. In her efforts to position Labour as a credible party of government, Reeves has made a calculated decision to adopt a fiscally conservative stance. She's committed herself to roughly the same set of fiscal rules as her Conservative predecessors, including the critical pledge to reduce debt as a percentage of national income by the 5th year of the forecast period. Yet herein lies the rub. Reeves simultaneously harbours ambitious plans to significantly increase spending on public works projects. She views these investments as essential for stimulating long-term economic growth and addressing Britain's chronic productivity challenges. Meanwhile, the pressures on government spending continue to mount relentlessly across a broad spectrum of areas, from bolstering national defence capabilities to funding the green energy transition and caring for a rapidly ageing population. Reeves has already found herself caught between a rock and a hard place in a bid to end months of industrial unrest. She acquiesced to inflation-busting pay demands from public sector unions. This decision alone has added nearly $10 billion to the government's annual wage bill, a significant sum that will need to be accounted for in future budgets. Further complicating matters, the Chancellor has promised to maintain several costly spending commitments inherited from her predecessors. Chief amongst these is the controversial triple lock guarantee on state pensions. According to projections from the Office of Budget Responsibility, the OBR, maintaining this policy over the long term could add a further 8% of GDP to the national debt, compared to less generous forms of pension indexation. Reeves has been unequivocal in her stance on austerity. There will be no return to the swinging public spending cuts that characterised much of the past decade under Conservative rule. Yet, in a bid to neutralise potential Tory attacks accusing Labour of planning a tax bombshell, she also ruled out increases to the 4 primary sources of government revenue: income tax, VAT, national insurance contributions and corporation tax. This self-imposed straitjacket presents a significant challenge. Together, these 4 taxes account for a whopping 3/4 of all government income. By taking them off the table, Reeves has left herself scrambling to identify alternative revenue-raising measures in the more obscure corners of the tax system. To many observers, this long list of seemingly contradictory promises, aims and commitments appears to present an impossible conundrum. How can Reeves simultaneously increase public investment, maintain expensive policy commitments, avoid spending cuts and rule out major tax increases, all while reducing the national debt as a share of GDP? It's a circle that even the most skilled political geometrician would struggle to square. Yet Britain's debt predicament is far from unique. Indeed, its challenge shared by virtually all mature advanced economies of any significant size. Drawing on data from the International Monetary Fund, we can see that gross national debt in the United States currently stands at 123% of GDP. In France, the figure is 112%, while Canada's debt to GDP ratio hovers around 104%. Italy, long considered one of Europe's more fragile economies, carries a debt burden equivalent to 139 of its annual economic output. But perhaps the most extreme case is that of Japan. The world's third largest economy labours under a truly mind-boggling debt load, with gross national debt standing at an eye-watering 255% of GDP. This astronomical figure serves as a stark reminder of the potential long-term consequences of sustained deficit spending and economic stagnation. As Britain navigates these treacherous fiscal waters, the stakes could not be higher. The decisions made by Rachel Reeves and her successors in the coming years will shape the economic fortunes of the United Kingdom for generations to come. Will they find a way to thread the needle, balancing the competing demands of public investment, fiscal responsibility and market confidence? Or will Britain ultimately succumb to the weight of its debts, triggering a crisis that could reshape the economic and political landscape of the nation? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the clock is ticking and the margin for error is rapidly diminishing. As Britain hurtles towards that 3 trillion debt milestone, the need for clear-eyed, decisive action has never been more urgent. That's all for now. Bye-bye and see you next time.